The call came in at 6:47 in the morning, and Joanna Teller almost didn't pick up. She was already running late. Her scrubs were damp from the parking lot rain. The coffee she'd bought from the vending machine on the second floor had gone cold before she even opened it. She had 4 hours left on a 12-hour shift. Her lower back was telling her things she didn't want to hear, and the number on her screen was the hospital's main administrative line, which never meant good news at this hour. She answered anyway. Miss Teller. It was Gerald Fitch, the floor administrator. His voice had that particular flatness people use when they've already decided something before making the call. Dr. Harmon would like you in the conference room on 6, now, if possible. She didn't ask why. She'd learned a long time ago that asking why to Gerald Fitch only gave him more time to talk. The 6th floor conference room smelled like burnt coffee and carpet cleaner. There were 4 people already seated when Joanna walked in. Dr. Harmon at the head of the table, which was itself a statement. Beside him, a woman from hospital administration, whose name Joanna had never learned despite seeing her face for 3 years, and 2 residents in their white coats, both young, both trying not to look at Joanna as she came in. Dr. Harmon didn't stand. He was 61 years old, had 2 published textbooks and a Wikipedia page, and he used both facts regularly in conversation. Close the door, he said. She closed it. We have a situation on 4. He folded his hands on the table. Room 412. The family is making demands that are, frankly, outside the scope of what this department should be entertaining. The patient is 67, presenting with progressive neurological decline, 3 weeks of worsening symptoms. We've run the standard panel. I've reviewed it personally. The diagnosis is early onset Alzheimer's, complicated by vascular components. Joanna stood near the door. No one had offered her a chair, and there weren't any extras pulled up. The family, Harmon continued, has apparently been speaking with you. The daughter, yes, Miriam. She comes in every evening. She's been questioning the diagnosis. She has concerns, Joanna said carefully. Harmon's expression didn't change. She filed a formal complaint this morning, requesting an independent review. She cited, he glanced at a paper in front of him, a conversation she had with a staff member she described as the night nurse. That would be you. The 2 residents were definitely not looking at her now. I listened to her, Joanna said. I didn't diagnose her father. You said, and I'm quoting from her written statement, that something else might be worth looking at. The room was very quiet. Joanna had been a nurse for 11 years. She'd started at 22, right out of a program she'd paid for with 3 jobs, and a loan that took her 6 years to clear. Before that, she'd worked as a home health aide, and before that, as a grocery stocker. And before that, she'd been the kind of teenager who raised her younger brother because their mother worked doubles at a factory in Roanoke, and their father was a postcard from the early 90s. She had learned early that the world sorted people quickly and without apology, and that a woman in scrubs with a state school degree did not correct men with Wikipedia pages. She had also learned to trust what she saw. Mr. Weston has been in 412 for 19 days, she said. Her voice was even. She'd practiced even for a long time. His symptoms started 6 weeks before admission. Rapid onset, not gradual. His daughter told me he was fine, completely lucid, completely himself, in January. The progression she described is faster than a typical Alzheimer's presentation. Harmon smiled. It was not a warm smile. Mrs. Teller, we've run an MRI, a full metabolic panel, CSF analysis. I've reviewed everything. Are you suggesting that a nurse has caught something a team of attending physicians missed? One of the residents shifted in his seat. I'm suggesting it might be worth ruling out autoimmune encephalitis, Joanna said. The smile stayed. It got smaller. Anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis, she continued. The symptom timeline fits. The age is atypical, but not impossible. It's been documented in patients over 60. The MRI can appear normal in the early stages. The CSF analysis depends on what was tested. If the anti-NMDA panel wasn't specifically ordered, I know what anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis is, Harmon said, and his voice dropped about half an octave. Then you know it's treatable, Joanna said. If we're wrong, we've lost a blood draw in a week. If we're right and we don't test, we've lost the window. The administrator from HR was writing something on a notepad. Joanna couldn't see what. Harmon leaned back in his chair. He looked at her the way she'd seen people look at a puddle on the floor. Not angry, exactly, just inconvenienced by its existence. You have, he said slowly, a patient family that is already distressed and already making formal complaints. Introducing an alternate diagnosis at this stage, based on a conversation in the hallway at 2 in the morning, would be irresponsible. It would create false hope. It would complicate the care plan, and frankly, it would raise questions about the professionalism of this department. He paused. Are you following me? She was following him perfectly. What I'm going to ask, he said, is that you have no further informal conversations with the Weston family regarding diagnosis or treatment. If the daughter approaches you, redirect her to the attending team. That's the appropriate protocol, and I'm surprised you needed this conversation to arrive at it. She said nothing. Do we have an understanding? Yes, she said. She meant, I heard you. She did not mean, I agree. Miriam Weston was 44 years old and had driven 3 hours from Charlotte every day for 18 days. She had taken unpaid leave from her job teaching high school English. She had a thermos she refilled in the family waiting room, and a paperback she never actually read, and eyes that were red in a way that had become permanent. The kind of red that happens when someone has cried so many times the tissue underneath just gives up going back to normal. She was in the hallway outside 412 at 11:45 that night when Joanna came by on rounds. He said my name today, Miriam said, this morning, clearly, like himself, and then by afternoon he didn't know where he was again. Her voice broke on the last word and then steadied. She was clearly practiced at that too. Is that normal? For Alzheimer's? Joanna had been told not to have this conversation. She had been told by a man who had never spent 11 years watching patients in the dark hours of the night. In the hours when families sat alone in hallways, and no one with a white coat was around to receive their fear. She had been told to redirect, to defer, to perform the smooth institutional motion of pointing someone toward a process that had already failed them. She looked at Miriam Weston. She thought about the anti-NMDA literature she'd read on her phone on her break, about the case study she'd found from Johns Hopkins describing a 63-year-old man. Almost exactly the same presentation, almost exactly the same timeline. About the fact that the specific antibody panel required for diagnosis was not part of a standard CSF workup, and almost certainly had not been ordered. It can be, Joanna said. Lucid intervals are documented. Miriam nodded, wanting to believe it. I'd also like you to ask the attending team, Joanna said carefully, whether the autoimmune encephalitis panel has been run. The specific test. You can tell them you read about it. You can say you'd like confirmation that it was ruled out. Miriam looked at her. Ask them to document the answer, Joanna said. In writing. Then she moved on to the next room because she had 14 more patients and 4 hours left on a shift that was slowly becoming the longest of her life. The attending team was not pleased when Miriam Weston arrived at the morning meeting with a written list of questions. Dr. Harmon was not there. It was a junior attending named Prescott who had to field it, and Prescott, to his credit, went back to the chart. The autoimmune panel had not been ordered. It was ordered that afternoon, a specific targeted antibody test, the kind that takes 72 hours to process, which felt like 72 hours of everyone in the hospital, pretending nothing unusual was happening, while Joanna went about her rounds and said nothing and felt the particular tension of a person who has placed a bet they're not allowed to acknowledge. She didn't tell anyone what she'd done. She told her brother Corey, who was 26 and worked at a garage in Fredericksburg, and called her every Sunday. She told him on Sunday, keeping her voice low in the parking garage, where she sat in her car on her lunch break, because she didn't want anyone to overhear. Joe, he said, when she'd finished. Yeah, what if you're wrong? Then I'm wrong, she said. But I'd already be in trouble for the meeting, might as well be in trouble for something real. She heard him exhale slowly. He did that long exhale, when he was trying not to say the thing he wanted to say. What? She said. He paused. You've done this your whole life. Put yourself on the line for people who don't even know your name. Her father might be treatable, Corey. I know. That's it, she said. That's the whole reason. He was quiet for a moment. Then, call me when you know. The result came back on a Thursday morning. Joanna was not in the building when it was processed. She was home, asleep, in the way that night shift nurses are asleep, dead, bottomless, with her phone face down on the nightstand and the curtains doing their inadequate best against the afternoon sun. She woke at 2 to a missed call from a number she didn't recognize and a voicemail from Dr. Prescott. She sat up in bed and played it twice. Anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis, confirmed. The antibody panel had come back positive. Arthur Weston. The man in 412, the man Miriam had driven 3 hours every day to sit with, had a diagnosable, documented, treatable autoimmune condition that had been reclassified twice in the last decade as awareness spread. The kind of thing that 5 years ago would have been missed by nearly everyone, and 10 years ago would have been missed by everyone. It had been missed here, too, for 19 days. By a team with textbooks and white coats and a department head with a Wikipedia page. It had not been missed by the night nurse. Joanna sat in her bedroom for a long time. The curtains moved a little. Outside, someone was mowing a lawn, the sound of it ordinary and unhurried, the sound of a Thursday afternoon in a world where some things were still fine. She called Corey. "You were right," he said, before she could say anything. They confirmed it. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "Is he going to be okay?" "If treatment starts soon, statistically, yes. High rate of recovery if it's caught." She swallowed. It was caught. She heard him make a sound she recognized. The sound he'd made when she'd called to tell him she'd passed her licensing exam, when she'd called to tell him she'd gotten the hospital position, the particular sound of her brother feeling things he had no words for. It wasn't a big sound. It never was. "Joe," he said. "I know," she said. Arthur Weston began treatment that same Thursday. The protocol for anti-NMDA receptor encephalitis is aggressive, high-dose immunotherapy, IVIG, close monitoring, and it doesn't look like recovery right away. It looks like fighting for weeks. Miriam Weston sat in the hallway with her thermos, and her unread paperback, and her permanently reddened eyes, and she waited. Joanna saw her on Friday night. "They told me," Miriam said, "about the test." She was looking at Joanna in a way that made Joanna want to look somewhere else. "They said one of the nursing staff flagged it. The team ordered the right tests," Joanna said, which was true technically. "That's not what I heard." Miriam's voice was steady in a way that cost her something. "I asked Prescott directly. He didn't confirm it, but he didn't deny it either. And I remember what you told me in the hallway." Joanna said nothing. "Why didn't you just start it again? Why didn't you say it was you? It doesn't matter who flagged it. It matters to me." Joanna looked at the floor for a moment, looked back up. "Your father is getting the right treatment now. That's the whole thing. That's everything." Miriam pressed her lips together. Her eyes went bright, and then she blinked hard. "He has a grandson," she said, 9 years old. "His name is Eli. My dad was teaching him to play chess before all of this." She stopped. I need you to understand that this isn't abstract to me. You weren't just right about a test, you." She stopped again. Joanna understood. "Go be with him," Joanna said. "They're running the second infusion tonight. He needs you there." Miriam nodded. She started to go. Then she turned back. "What's your name?" "Your actual name. I only ever see your badge." "Teller," Joanna said. "Joanna Teller." Miriam repeated it quietly, like she was writing it somewhere she wouldn't lose it. Then she went back into 412, and Joanna went back to her rounds, and the hospital went on being a hospital. Fluorescent and relentless and ordinary. The way it always did, regardless of what had just happened inside it. Harmon called her into his office the following Monday. She'd known he would. She'd spent the weekend knowing, the way you know about a storm when the air pressure changes and the birds stop making noise. His office smelled like old paper and wood polish. There were diplomas on the wall, 4 of them, in matching frames, the kind of arrangement that's been thought about. He was standing when she came in, which was different from the conference room where he'd been seated. She wasn't sure if standing was better or worse. "I assume you've heard about the Weston case," he said. "I have. I want to be very clear." He moved behind his desk but didn't sit. "What happened in this case is a failure of process. When a nursing staff member has clinical concerns, there is a formal pathway. There is a chain of communication. What does not happen, what cannot happen, is unilateral action based on a hallway conversation." "I told the daughter to ask about the test," Joanna said. "I didn't prescribe anything. I didn't alter the chart. I told a family member to ask a question. You circumvented the attending team." The attending team had 3 weeks to ask the question themselves. The room went very still. Harmon looked at her with the expression of a man who was deciding between 2 responses and choosing the colder one. "You have been here 6 years. You have a solid record. I want to acknowledge that." He paused. "But this institution cannot function if nursing staff are making end runs around clinical decision-making based on personal hunches. If you believe there was a diagnostic gap, the correct course of action was to document it and raise it with your charge nurse, not to approach the family. I'm aware of the process, she said. Then you understand why I'm documenting this conversation. Yes, this will go in your file. It will be reviewed at your next performance evaluation. If something like this happens again, we will be talking about a very different outcome for your employment here. He let that sit for a moment. Do you understand? She looked at him. She thought about Arthur Weston, who had started to recognize Miriam's voice again by Saturday morning. Who had, according to the night tech, who'd told Joanna without being asked, because word travels in hospitals the way it travels nowhere else, asked where Eli was, his grandson, the 9-year-old learning chess. I understand, she said. What she meant was, I would do it again. She meant it the way she meant most things, clearly and without drama, and in a register no one in this room was equipped to hear. She walked out of his office. She walked down the hall to the elevator. She pressed the button for the 4th floor, because she had a shift to finish and 14 patients, and the specific, sustainable rhythm of a person who has been doing necessary work for 11 years and intends to keep doing it. In the elevator, she thought about Corey, and about the garage in Fredericksburg, and about their mother, who used to work doubles and come home with her hands smelling like machine oil, and still somehow made pancakes on Sunday mornings. She thought about the way the world made its categories, who was supposed to know things, who was supposed to say them, whose instincts were labeled knowledge, and whose were labeled presumption. She thought about Eli learning chess. The elevator opened on 4. She walked out. There is a particular kind of person who goes through life not because they've been given the right rooms, but because they know what they're looking for, and they keep looking even when the room is dark and the door is officially closed, and the man at the head of the table has already decided they're not worth listening to. You have probably met this person. You may have been this person. They don't usually announce themselves. They're too busy. What happened to Arthur Weston is not a remarkable story in the way remarkable stories usually are. There was no ceremony. No one put Joanna Teller's name on anything. The case became a teaching moment. She heard this secondhand, from a resident who said it with the careful vagueness of someone who knows more than they're saying, about the importance of the autoimmune panel in atypical neurological presentations. The teaching moment did not mention the night nurse. Arthur Weston went home in early April. Miriam sent a card to the nursing station. A real card, handwritten on thick paper. It was addressed to the night staff of 4 North. It said, "My father asked me yesterday what I wanted for my birthday. He hasn't asked me anything in 4 months. Thank you for not giving up on him." Joanna read it once, in the break room, standing up with her coffee. Then she put it back on the corkboard where it had been pinned. Then she went back to work because there were 13 other rooms on the floor, and the night was long, and someone had to be paying attention.